Perfect. We will get started. Amazing. Everyone's introducing themselves. Perfect. Just before we start, would like to share that this meeting will be recorded. So feel free to, and I definitely encourage you to turn your cameras on so that we can see you. But definitely do not feel obliged to turn your camera on or your microphone. But always welcome. Amazing. Welcome to this launch conversation. Matt and I in particular, but everyone else that has been part of this project are very, very excited to be welcoming you here. And whether you are seeing this for the first time or you have been involved in the project in some capacity, we hope that today, in today's conversation, is a good introduction to you, to this project, and everything that we've been putting together for the past few weeks. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge the ecosystems of Australia, which form the foundations of our society, culture, and economy. We pay our deep respects to First Peoples, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, who for over 60,000 years have cared for country through ancient songlines, cultural management practices, and trade. In the spirit of reconciliation, as we tackle youth eco anxiety and issues like climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution, we embrace the unique powers of Indigenous, Western, and diverse knowledge systems. And I welcome anyone that would like to do their own acknowledgement of country or acknowledge which lands they're calling from. Feel free to do that in the chat as well. But yes, welcome to this conversation. I would like to introduce the lovely team. This is not everyone on the screen, but everyone else will be introducing themselves as the conversation goes on. But would love to introduce myself. My name is Vasil. I am calling in. I usually reside in Ghana land in Adelaide, but I'm actually calling in from New York, from the lands of the Lenape people. I'm just finishing up a placement at the United Nations here, representing young Australians from all walks of life as this year's youth delegate. But over the past few months, I have been coordinating the youth representative program, which is exactly what it sounds like, just trying to give a voice to young Australians. At the United Nations and at international policy-making forums. So very, very excited to be joining you here. Matt, did you want to introduce yourself as well?
Omanjeka, welcome everyone. And also Moi, hello here from Helsinki in Finland. Similar to Vasil, I'm traveling at the moment for work, but really grateful to have this opportunity to come together and to share this collaboration around transforming youth eco-anxiety to action. This collaboration between Regeneration Projects, UN Youth Australia, and our colleagues at RMIT University. It's something that, is something that we feel very passionate about, and we believe that we can continue to make a difference in. So grateful that you're joining us, and also excited about explaining how the project came to be and ways that we can use the handbook and other tools to spark conversations in our learning in places, in our workplaces, and across our communities and different parts of Australia and beyond. Georgia, perhaps I can pass to you from the RMIT team just to give a brief introduction on behalf of the working groups that have been making the campaign possible as well.
Hi everyone. As Matt said, I'm Georgia and I'm a co-league for the RMIT team. I'm calling in from Nam on Wurundjeri land, and I'm really excited to meet you all today, to put some faces to all the work we've been doing. And I'm really excited about this project as well. It's a cause that I've kind of been waiting for, and I feel like it just kind of landed in my lap. So yeah.
Yes, very, very nice to see you here as well, Georgia. Anyone else from the RMIT team or from UN Youth team or from Regeneration Project who would like to introduce themselves, feel free to do so. Or otherwise, everyone else in the conversation, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat as well. I would love to hear from you as we go on as well. Anyone wanted to take the floor? Otherwise, very happy to keep moving. Amazing. Well, very, very nice to chat to you. As everyone else has shared already, this has been a very big and important passion project of all of us for the past few months. Transforming youth eco-anxiety to action is something that feels very important and very crucial right now for us, and we will explore that topic a bit more with you. But what we need you to definitely take with you after this conversation is that this is not the end of this topic, and we would really love to see you take up these resources that we have developed through our efforts and make the most out of them, develop them, improve them, and use them in your own contexts to make a difference after this conversation. But with that being said, Matt, would you like to introduce the campaign?
Thank you, Vasil. I'll share just a brief overview of the different project elements that make up the campaign, and then I'll backtrack a little bit to a moment where, yeah, for me, it was one of the sparks that helped kickstart this process. So as part of the Transforming Youth Eco-Anxiety to Action campaign, there's 3 specific elements. One is a handbook, and that comprises different elements that range from presenting the issue, talking about how different research from industry, from academic, from youth-led context, all emphasize very similar messages. And then it goes into examples of solutions. And so we wanted to talk about ways that people are already transforming, eco-anxiety into action so that they can be scaled, so that they can be replicated in other places and be made more visible, because we know that change is possible. Sometimes it's just getting started that is a tricky part. So at the end of the report, we also put forward a series of recommendations about where next. And we think this is absolutely critical. At the highest level of decision making, we have leaders, senior ministers that we've been advocating towards, the Climate Minister, Chris Bowen, and also Tanya Plibersek, the Minister for Environment of the Australian Government. And then also at the state level, we've been sharing some of this information too. But then also in corporate organizations, in universities, at different levels, even in every workplace, in every learning place, in households, this is all very relevant. So those recommendations about making those steps very, very clear. That's the handbook. And then to complement that, we wanted to bring in some voices of people that could share stories and personal experiences. And that's where the 2Base podcast series, which has the same name, Transforming Youth Eco-Anxiety to Action, brings in different champions from around Australia and really in some great intergenerational conversations. And it's brilliant to see some of those faces joining us in this particular gathering here today. The third dimension is obviously the social media and the advocacy element. So what you'll see more visibly is a rollout across Regeneration projects, 2Base podcast, UN Youth Australia, Australian Youth Representative social media channels, as well as some of our partner social medias, but also back of house, you won't be seeing some of the things that we've been doing, media releases, and also, some of the communication with decision makers and so on in government. So this is something that will continue for the coming weeks, and then the activation for the large part of the campaign will happen until the end of October, and then the podcast will roll until the end of November. And we're hoping to land, we made a very ambitious call to have the Prime Minister join us on the last episode, which we're still working towards. But if not, we have been in communication with the Environment Minister and the Climate Minister. So we do believe that this is it's an issue of national significance, and hopefully when you see the stats too, that you'll be even more convinced. Just on a personal level, you know, why do we do things like this? It was back in May that I woke up on a Saturday morning and I took a walk. We live, Susie, my wife, I think, is actually on the call here. Shout out to Suze for her support. I took a walk to a place that's called the Peace Garden. It's in Flemington or Kensington, near where we live. And I was just sitting there and flicking through some of the news. And I was noticing another article that was talking about the youth mental health crisis. And I don't have children, but I have 11 nephews and nieces. And so every time I see statistics around this, it's always deeply concerning to me. And I was reading through these stats and I just thought, wow, here we are, roughly 5 years, you know, since when I was starting to personally look at how I could transform my own eco-anxiety to action and then going on to start my business. But we're having the same conversation and it seems to be getting worse. Why is that? It doesn't make any sense. So what I tried to do in that situation was to reach out to some people that I thought could make a difference. And among the couple of emails that I sent that morning, one was to the Environment Minister, another one was to UN Youth Australia. And I was very grateful that Vasil and the team responded to this so quickly and so openly, and that were up for the conversation around trying to make a difference. And I think for me, if you take one thing away from this conversation, these feelings that we have when we read these statistics, there's always something that we can do. There's always someone that we can spark a conversation with, and we're not alone. And in fact, it's so important that we do reach out and express these feelings and reach out to each other, because that's what moves things forward. And so I'm going to pass back to you on that note, Vasil, and just, yeah, to express my gratitude once again for being open to this journey together.
No, of course, and I can say that, yeah, that was one of the more exciting emails that we receive. So yes, it was very, very exciting, and we're very grateful as well for the opportunity to work on this. As Matt said, the issue here really is the global youth mental health crisis, and an aspect of it that often gets forgotten about is the fact that climate change is a big trigger, and is one of the key sticking points in a very increasing intergenerational communication divide. A lot of young people share with us throughout our consultations that they feel like they really care about climate change. It's a big issue for them, but sometimes that doesn't translate to older generations. Same thing we hear the other way around as well. So it's a big issue, and so what we'll take you through is the way that we perceive to be the solution, and what impact we could really make in this space. Without further ado, we wanted to take you through to start up with the reason why you should care. And usually you would kind of go through a big presentation on reasons why you should care. But we think that this is one of those issues that everyone inherently cares about already. So let's test that. Let's see how many of the following statements you agree with. So feel free to interact with through the chat and through the reactions for this one. So I'll pose a statement to you, mostly statements that we've heard from young people shared across the year, and you can react with a thumbs up if you agree with the following statement. So let's give that a try. I fear our climate is getting worse. So use the react or use the chat if you agree or disagree with this statement. Give you a few moments to react. Georgia, I can see the thumbs up. Carolyn, Regina. Absolutely, yeah. Definitely. Does anyone feel brave to share what they think? Good.
Well, I'm just in Indonesia at the moment, and I mean, I've not been back to Bali for 15 years. I'm doing a lot of work here currently with the state premier kind of thing in the area, but I just cannot believe how the traffic moves nowhere now, completely nowhere. Like you can be stuck getting somewhere for an hour, a journey that used to take you 5 minutes, and it's just incredible. And I'm also working with Jolti and together with Prime Minister Modi in India at the moment, and they're looking at ways of getting the young people engaged again, and they're having similar problems over there as well. So
No, definitely. Yeah, and thanks a lot for sharing. It's interesting sometimes to see how contexts differ across the Pacific, but a lot of things stay the same, and this is definitely one of those. Um,
mm,
Everyone that said yes, you tend to agree with 81% of young Australians. Young people are significantly concerned with climate, and they do see a change. It's not like it's stagnated, it's actually gotten worse. So definitely share those sentiments. Next statement. I feel like technology has allowed me to voice my concerns. Same thing, agree or disagree. Technology has allowed me to voice my concerns. Yeah, mostly agree. There's a middle as well. Same thing. Anyone want to share their thoughts around this statement? Jordan, you're in the middle. Why is that? Mm. If you want to share anyone want to share your thoughts in the chat, definitely. But if you did agree, you are just like 65% of young Australians. Australia's university Gen Z are not engaged in traditional climate activism. However, these young people are using technology to voice these concerns, and a lot of young people share that technology has allowed them to have a voice in a different medium. And this is research by Diana and Dora, who are also in the call as well. Um, Jordan shares that depending on what we define technology, some people see technology as a way to share false news. So we share concerns over false information. That is also true. So maybe it's given a voice to people with different purposes. Interesting. Perfect. Feel free to keep interacting in the chat. Next statement. I feel like my workplace increases my climate anxiety. And same thing. Do we agree? Do we disagree? Regina, maybe I'll ask you, why do you agree with this?
I think in my specific context, my workplace is the ice rink. So it is a lot of water being used. It's a lot of energy, that is going towards something that is, recreational. And so I do think about that sometimes, and I think about my moral ties to that. But I also think that, workplaces, and also broader society in general needs to be more aware of climate and needs to be more active about it, because we've acknowledged it and we have a lot of institutions and we have a lot of agreements that acknowledge it, but we don't have the kind of action that we've seen being promised. And that is something that weighs on my mind every now and then.
Definitely. Claire, Dora, did you want to share some of your thoughts either through the chat or through the mic?
I can share some reflections.
Mhm.
Oh, sorry, was it you, Dora? You go. Well, no, I can jump in. Also, sorry if there's any windy background noise. I'm outside getting some nature. So I work in sustainability consulting, and I think part of that it makes me feel both better and worse about the climate crisis. And I think the reason for that is because you engage with it every day, and things are objectively not looking great. And so that can be pretty demoralizing. But also at the same time, the fact that you're working on solutions in amongst all of the really, really heavy stuff gives me hope. And so sometimes that helps to manage my climate anxiety. So I wonder if there might be a few people on the call who feel a little bit in a similar way.
I have a question. I have a question for Claire. Is that really your surname, Wild?
Yes, it is. I'm pretty sure it comes from Ireland, I think. Apparently there were sort of the wild people of Ireland who lived, I don't know, somewhere. That's anecdotal.
What a beautiful surname. We need to rewild the entire planet, don't we? What I wanted to say is a lot of young people that I deal with, they deliberately select, as Claire said, employment opportunities that actually help them respond to the issues in relation to climate change and sustainability broader, which decreases their anxiety because they know that they're doing something meaningful for them and something that is going to have better outcomes. But if you're talking about the average workplace, I would say it's still economic rationalism or neoclassical economics that hasn't factored the importance of the environment into the way decisions are made and the type of activities that are being prioritized.
Definitely, yeah, and these are all very valuable contributions, and you've definitely noted the split there. A lot of what we do see here is that 1 in 3 young Aussies feel this way. So there's not necessarily the majority that they feel like their workplace increases their climate anxiety. Part of that, as Claire and Dora pointed out, is maybe young people are seeking out deliberately workplace opportunities that allow them to see the issues but also to take action. So that is particularly interesting to see, especially among young people. So definitely we shouldn't look at this issue as just doom and gloom. Young people know what pathways there are for them to make a difference, and they don't all look negative on this issue. Final statement for today. I want to discuss climate openly with people who are older or younger than me. Do we agree? Do we disagree? What do we think?
Just as people are reacting to that one, I think this is something that I personally resonate with as both an opportunity, but also a significant predicament. Having been in workplaces where I've felt that older, managers and decision makers haven't been open or receptive to conversations about, acknowledging the concerns about, climate and environmental issues, but also then probably downplaying the importance of trying to respond to that through action in some way. On the flip side, some work that was featured in the handbook was a study we did with Young Tourism Network, which was the Workplaces report. And that showed that 9 out of 10 younger and older people that were surveyed in that particular study were open to intergenerational working groups on sustainability. So I thought that was quite interesting, Basil.
Definitely. And yeah, I think I resonate with that as well. Did anyone else want to share?
Can I also share something? And so discussing climate anxiety openly across generation, I believe is really powerful way to build understanding and motivate collective actions. But many young people, they tend to feel climate anxiety because they will experience the long-term consequences of environmental degradation, which all the generation are not experiencing in the same way. And younger people may feel powerless against systems that seems unchangeable. They can't do anything to change what the older people, feel, and probably they will think that this generation is not so responsible as the older generations, and is actually creating a gap, because the younger generation thinks that they will be living to deal with something that is very hard for them to deal with. And this is something that is related to environmental damage, which is irreversible, related to, a kind of generational understanding of different things that, people are facing. So I don't know. It's very, very kind of difficult. It's very complex to be explained even.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry, Vasil. I really resonate with what you're saying. And it made me think of when I was 18 and I worked for a bakery, and every night, because the bakery couldn't really be bothered finding an organization or something to donate the leftover bread to, the leader of the bakery, so the bakery has like 7 stores across Melbourne, he just said to throw it all out. And I remember thinking, this is very wrong. And one day I actually raised it with him. Well, not with him, with my manager, to talk to him. And I said, hey, what if I find an organization? What if I link it all up? I get the logistics together and we can figure out something to do with this bread. And I expected my manager to give me kind of kudos for, wanting to make that link. But instead he said, I know you're worried about waste in the environment, but I want you to know that people want you to be scared. And they were scaring me when I was your age, and now they're scaring you. And he just had this very dismissive approach to it all. And it saddened me, because I was like, you've obviously felt what I'm feeling. And it feels like everyone, sentiment of anxiety I've had through that is people are following their predecessors, but they're not necessarily following the good parts when it comes to climate change.
I also want to attest to that. That's something that I relate to so much. And as an 18-year-old at the moment, I find that in my university, it is pretty difficult to be able to start the conversation at a higher level beyond the student groups. And also trying to see that action being implemented, even if it is heard, is something that I find is also very difficult. So absolutely.
Just say I love the fact that we already are starting to have intergenerational dialogue, and all of this is all that intergenerational dialogue is to me is people who are conditioned or have the misconception of thinking that they cannot relate, finding similarities in their own unique experiences, and sharing how their unique experiences impact them and resonate with them. So it's a very beautiful conversation that we've started up. Carolyn, you wanted to share something?
Sorry, just bear with me. Technology after this many years. I think I've been hearing in the conversation, they're amazing. Thanks, everyone. I think I do echoing a lot of this intergenerational conflicts. I think the problems are at so many different levels. And I think the fundamental one is people's perceive of future. And young people's perceive of the future, of course, by the background, is going to be more risky and they're going to perceive the future slightly more challenging, where when the old generation were younger and they had that kind of like perceived future to be a bit scary, and now they older, they became more resilient and they get to know a lot of these things what they feared for didn't happen, like nuclear war. And I remember when I launched my first climate change report, I was interviewed by media, and then one of them asked me, oh, how does young people's worry about climate change is similar or dissimilar to when people are worried about a nuclear war? And I was astonished when hearing about that. It doesn't work in that sense. One is more a political fear that we created from time to time. The other is the reality that everybody has to deal with. But I think it's because their older generation have got that future view. For one thing, they've been through things, they thought they're more resilient, so they hide themselves a little bit from time to time, I think. And the other case is they do perceive their future in more shorter distance. They'll think, oh, my generation probably would be able to survive the climate change. Younger generation will have a different perspective, and they're probably thinking, I remember we did ask a lot of these questions. A lot of them think the world may potentially end with their lifespan. So this future perception is definitely different. And then until we kind of like are able to put everybody into the same catalog of thinking about, it's not about my future, it's a collective future. And it's very difficult to start that intergenerational conversation. That's my feeling.
Definitely. Dora?
I just want to share something that I heard in an interview by Jeffrey Sachs, where he was sharing his experience at COP28, when he decided to go and listen to what NATO representatives had to discuss about climate change. And I think his original interest was probably something along the lines how the army can help in climate emergencies and things like this. Well, he realized that the discussions were along the lines of how you can kill people in a more environmentally friendly way. So the point that I'm making is that there are certain, and he left the room, he essentially left. So there are situations where you just need to be selective as to whom you talk to, and when you see that the conversation is, or the people that are participating in the conversation, and at a completely different length wave, you need to be, how can I say, you just need to ignore that and be selective as to where you can have an impact and what you can do to keep your own sanity, because sometimes it's just impossible to change somebody's view, and that brings more the importance of group like this one where you are with like-minded people, and as we say, how you turn this into action. So the emphasis is what can be done, rather than trying to convert people that are impossible to convert.
Diana, and maybe we'll finish the discussion there. Oh, you're on mute, Diana. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say that I totally agree with Dora that we basically need to look at the actions and need to talk about solutions, not just the problems, because we can address how individual action can change things, and also how we can actually promote collective efforts. We can start even among younger people, or among like mixed generations, parents and kids and teenagers and whatever, because we have to acknowledge the generational differences without any blame, because this is always climate anxiety discussion somehow is turning into blame. Older generation blaming younger ones for being too emotional, or younger people blaming older people that are having inaction. So I think that somehow we have to emphasize the need to address these things together without finger pointing. This is what I wanted to share.
Definitely, and this leads very well into, I guess, the statistics that we have surrounding this statement is that young people do like overwhelmingly want to be part of these conversations, and they share the same things that they want to be part of an intergenerational working group on sustainability, on issues. They don't want to just be heard. They want to work alongside older generations, and older generations, for the most part, I assume, also want the same. So it is definitely not for a lack of trying, but as you said, Diana, and a few others touched upon, when people get lost into the blaming or the digging deeper into the issue for the sake of figuring out whose experience was harder or more unique, that's when these conversations can become less productive. So, but what we can definitely see is that young people, particularly as these insights from the Young Tourist Network, Tourism Network, what they show is young people do want to be part of these conversations and want to be part of the solution. So definitely thank you so much to all of you for contributing in this discussion, and I'm very excited to keep this going. What we can see again is in young people's words, this is what they see the issue is. Mental health is being neglected, particularly noted among males. You can see this 14-year-old young man from WA is sharing this. Climate change is an existential threat. As a lot of you pointed out, the entire world is threatened by climate change, so it does require a global effort. There seems to be felt a lack of mental health support for young Australians. This is particularly noted in regional and remote areas. As a local South Australian, I can definitely notice that as a struggle for our regional youth. And because of the amount of stigma, again, as what you were talking about, sometimes different people might attribute some stigma and associate stigma with mental health. And as a result, it is hard for people to reach out to their parents, their loved ones, their mentors for help in fear of being judged. So this is what we're trying to overcome, this feeling of judgment that people might feel that other people have towards them. And that's the biggest barrier that we've identified to intergenerational conversations. In summary, the research that we have used, again, that Diana and Dora, you are very well acquainted with, because we've referenced your work quite well, but we've referenced as well the work of United Nations Youth, as well as the Young Tourism Network. In summary, climate anxiety is showing up in Aussie households as well as in classrooms and workplaces. It is not limited to academic circles. Educators and employers seem to be ill-equipped to deal with mental health issues in general, including eco-anxiety and climate distress. So as you shared, even though young people are looking for specific employers that are able to, and specific workplaces that they're able to make the most impact in, overall, we seem to be lacking that sort of support on a workplace level. There is an intergenerational divide when it comes to communication and perception around issues like climate change and sustainability. We are seeming to be meeting closer and closer, but there seems to be a divide still across generations on these issues. And despite the consistency of compelling evidence, our society is stuck in its ability to transform eco-anxiety to action. And this is what essentially led the solution. The solutions that are provided in the handbook are not new things. They are not things that have taken a lot of brain power to come up with and are not unique to situations, but are a collection of things that we all in this call and people around us already know as fixes. So change is happening and innovative models are just ready to be scaled. So again, this should be interpreted as a handbook as a collection of solutions that already exist that might be useful to you. In tackling climate anxiety, these are the 5 aspects that the group that has worked on this project has noticed as the big sources of solutions. So I'm very interested to take a few minutes to discuss all of these and what they mean to you. To start, in tackling climate change, what do you think is the role of relationships in addressing climate anxiety? Did anyone want to take the floor and share what they think? Caroline, you shared that, yeah, we hear this again and again. Climate anxiety is a challenge to address in classrooms, workplaces, and clinical care, definitely. How can relationships assist in tackling this issue?
I'll just put a footnote to that as people are thinking a little bit further. One of the elements here is, in order to have constructive relationships, communication is a key opportunity and challenge, but sometimes we notice that there can be barriers to this. So this intergenerational communication and the quality of these relationships is one of the dimensions that is part of this particular theme.
Yeah, having building effective relationships and communication, and having a joint focus as well between generations, I think it's important.
Thank you. Yeah, Dora?
I may be interpreting relationships a little bit differently on a very personal level, because we do a lot of work around food with Diana, and this is where we see how important is the influence of family, of partners on food choices, and how this could influence people in one direction or in the opposite. Similar for friendships. So to me, it's really important that you build up good relationships with like-minded people, because that is very, very important as a support network or a network of people that you share similar views with.
Definitely. Thank you, Dora. That's a very valid approach to relationships, definitely. Carolyn, you wanted to share?
Hello. I think I'm also taking a step back about thinking about your relationship, but before that, I think we probably have to create a better set of language. I was reading a lot of things about emotional intelligence, and a lot of researchers have been highlighting a lot of things around how we communication and the failures of a communication. And a lot of time is to do with our language and really equipped with the proper wording of expressing a lot of these concerns and worries. And we often say it's climate anxiety, where anxiety, the term of anxiety and even distress is not an extremely helpful term to help with communication, and it has a clinical flavor, and it has a domain of understanding as the ill responding emotions rather than really effective concerning proper emotional responses to something in the reality. I think we probably have to really think about how can we better frame our language to communicate so that it's more effective. And about relationships, I think really I've been hearing a lot about connecting with like-kind people. However, I think this is really difficult. not everybody has the opportunity to participate and to be able to create these circles. For some people are easier. Say, for example, if you're going to a high school that you're well supported and you have a lot of, the school may have a lot of environmental programs and you feel likely to connect with people. But when you go to university as an undergrad and experience probably the world's most staggering loneliness of isolation, and where are you going to find your network of people, and everything will seems to be harder with all the additional challenges that we have in life. So I think this is a difficult task, and maybe it's a lot is expected to do, and I don't know the solution, but I'm just poking, posing my question in there, which I do deeply concerned. I think there has to be more collective efforts into building large infrastructure that can support easy access to these networks and resources for people to be connected. And we shouldn't be relying on people, oh, you should be connecting to like-minded people. It's not that easy, right?
Definitely, I think you brought up a few very very good points in terms of relationships and building networks is um, challenging for some, and especially for those who are not brought up to have access to those, and especially after COVID, what we notice as well is young people in particular finding it more difficult to find like-minded people as well. So that is very very interesting. And in terms of the language as well, that is a very good point as well. And so yeah, would love to for you to and for everyone on the call to kind of read through the way that we have like framed the language in the report, and it would be a really good starting point for future conversations as to how this phenomenon can be described best in order for it to be tackled the most proactively. So but again, the language and the way that we phrase and define things is really important to finding the best solution. So very, very good points here. We'll definitely keep going, but I love the discussion here. The way that we have framed the solution is around these 5 concepts. The relationships we see as the way of closing the communication gap. So what we talked about between the intergenerational divide and the misunderstandings is a real need of people to connect, and a real need of people to share experiences and to really listen. So relationships and building quality relationships on the ground level ensures that we're able to close that communication gap. We're able to understand each other better, and we're able to understand where our experiences are unique. So that is how this report defines relationships and sees relationships as a big driver of change on this issue. Capacity building is a way to close the leadership gap. Maybe that ties with some of what you were talking about, Carolyn, as to how education and opening up opportunities can be a real driver for change. Some people do not have access to opportunities, do not have access to leadership or being a driver of change, just simply based on the context that they're born and live in. So capacity building and being able to expand the access to opportunities is really, really important to making sure that these changes are seen, and that people from all walks of life feel like they're part of the solution and are not just observing it, or even worse, not even observing it. So capacity building is a big driver of change in this handbook. Governance and funding are 2 things that appear very out of reach for most people that we research about and that we survey, but are big drivers of change as well. Governance is seen as the way of closing the decision-making gap. So similarly to capacity building, people should be allowed to have access to decision-making mechanisms in order for them to feel part of the solution. So that is how this handbook interprets governance as a driver of change. Funding is a thing that is very dear to a lot of initiatives, particularly in the non-for-profit sector. So there's always need for more funding. There's always a need for increasing the capacity of programs. So any ways of closing the investment gap is welcomed in this handbook as well. Finally, mindset. Here we've put a very good quote that the truth is we need to upgrade the way we see ourselves, not as separate from nature, but as part of it. So sometimes we see that there is a simple mindset shift that is simple, but is very difficult to achieve in us being able to see ourselves as part of nature, as part of the environment, and not as beneficiaries of it. So that is a big driver of change as well that is showcased in the handbook, and we'll definitely encourage you to explore a bit further as well. So what do we recommend? Again, this handbook makes some recommendations and an outline of 12 actions, which are proposed by us as a way to move forward in these issues. It is now time for us to encourage you to have a look at these recommendations. So if you scan this QR code now, or go to the website that maybe I can ask Matt to put in a minute or two in the chat, you'll be able to have a look at the report, the handbook in its entirety, and you'll be able to use it for your purposes. So maybe we'll take a few minutes, and in the meantime, I'm very happy for anyone to ask questions, not only to myself, but to everyone that is on the call that has been involved in this project. On any of the handbook's aspects while you take a look. Matt, did you want to share anything on anything we've just talked about?
Yeah, thanks, Vasil. Yeah, just really encouraging people to download this link and to have a look yourselves. And I guess what we've already established here is that there's such a strong sense of support in this particular group, and really part of our challenges is to try and widen the circle. And so really what I think we can be thinking in the back of our minds are, who are those kind of connector people that are, you know, inside of workplaces? They might be people and culture managers, or there might be people that are working at a regional level with local councils. There could be people that are, you know, lecturers or teachers inside of universities, just really thinking creatively about different ways to get this out into community. Of course, the handbook is one of the tools, and the podcast series that we've got, and Patch will touch on that in a moment afterwards, is another tool. Some people like a longer format visual handbook, and yeah, shout out again to the RMIT team for presenting this as clearly as they have, because it really brings the content to life. But some people prefer to listen, you know, and that's where the podcast become a good tools. But just in the back of your mind, if you can be thinking about half a dozen people that you think, hey, these people really need to hear this. They might be young, you know, literally might be your own child, they might be your own parent, you know, or they might be people in your professional networks. But how can we get this word out there? And if you feel inspired, please get onto social media as well. Like, we're going to need everyone's help to spread this circle. So thank you in advance.
Definitely, and thank you, Matt. Did anyone have any questions or reflections on this? Otherwise, I'm very happy to leave this in your hands. And please do reach out to us. We'll have at the end our contacts to explore how we can best adapt the handbook to your context and to the schools or universities or workplaces that you're involved in at the moment.
So I just wanted to say,
yes, sorry.
Vasil, I just wanted to say, just before we go, I'm working on this paper at the moment for aiming at full employment for young people in northern India on the regeneration of agricultural lands. because they're actually lost 40% of their agricultural land they're expecting to lose another 40% within the next 50 to 60 years. And the air and water pollution are causing a lot of the suffering. And when I was actually going through the Land Select Journal, it was linked to about 9 million deaths in the year 2015. And biodiversity is being destroyed with the species after biological species being wiped out to the unprecedented rate. And we're saying it's leaving, people in India in the northern parts in a lonely and scary world. So that's what I'm actually working on at the moment. And yeah, I'll probably at some stage I'll share what I'm doing, what I'm working on in Australia with a few people as well, about creating a sense of community and engaging young people in some of these things as well.
Yeah, thank you, Darren. Yeah, that's some amazing work, and again, what you're highlighting as well is that this is not just an issue that is noted in Australia. So, very welcome to see how this fits within your work, and get in touch with us to discuss further. I know Matt and I in particular are very keen to hear more about the work that you do in India, and yeah, definitely very excited to see where this goes. I am also noting that there's a few reflections in the chat. Definitely feel free to keep sending those. The recording will include the chat as well, so we'll probably take note of that, and definitely we'll look through it even after this call. Definitely, and thank you for sharing that as well. We'll touch on the podcast a little bit, and we do have a few of our guests here that were part of the podcast. So maybe I'll open it up to the floor, to anyone that has been involved in the podcast. Can you share maybe a few things that you think make it a worthwhile listen, particularly noting the parts that you've been involved in?
I'd like to start. That's all right. So I was in an episode where I was with two different professionals. One worked in psychology specifically with men, and the other actually worked as head of nursing and had this very innovative process of making medical equipment reusable instead of just throwing it out after every use, which would make an enormous positive impact on just environmental health. And something that really came to light with me was how many different perspectives come out of this podcast, and also how rare it is to hear professionals in this industry, or in all different industries, talk in such a conversational and approachable manner. And as a guest speaker, I found that really interesting, kind of new water to wade in. And I think as a listener, it'll kind of scratch your brain a bit like that as well, where you'll just think, oh, hey, it's interesting kind of getting a really personal insight into all of these people's lives. It makes it a bit more human.
Definitely, and thank you for sharing that. I definitely resonate with that over the 6 episodes, which are all on different topics that are all related to this broader theme of climate anxiety and how do we tackle it. Across all of those episodes, there's such a variety of perspectives that you feel like you learn a lot even just through listening to a very quick snippet. Anyone else wanted to share their experience?
I think that might be all of those that were involved that are present now. A couple of people had to jump off. Claire was one of them, who has also been a co-host on the podcast. And yeah, I think just that element there of the personal stories and perspectives that Georgia was talking about there, I think that's what makes a lot of this stuff even more relatable, because sometimes when we hear in the media, or if we hear you know, we see in reports and so on that can feel very distant. But I think, you know, when we just hear people reflecting about their own honest experiences and the challenges they face, also the things that they're doing that are absolutely awesome and super inspiring, it's just nice to be able to, yeah, to hear that and to feel that and to make it accessible. So a new episode has just gone live today, and it's bringing in some voices from across the ditch in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Yeah, do jump on. There's a couple of links in the chat, and also subscribe here. You can see on Instagram, we've got a couple of links, and we have a feeling that from our past experiences, there's already been 150 downloads on the first 2 episodes. But we've noticed that very quickly this starts to get into the circles of decision makers and their advisors as a kind of non-intrusive way of helping them understand the issues that they're grappling with. So yeah, please do get the word out, because you never know whose ears it ends up in. But I think we might be starting to wrap up, Vasil.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you so much, Matt. And yes, if you haven't listened yet, please do give it a listen. As it's shown here, 2Base Podcast on Apple and Spotify. I'll leave these links here as well. It's a very quick way to get involved in Regeneration Project and UN Youth Australia. Regeneration projects, Matt, you can talk a bit more about in a second, but UN Youth Australia is the largest youth-led non-for-profit organization in the country. It actually is currently a host of over 2,000 volunteers across the entire country. And we do a lot of programs with the sole purpose of empowering youth, opening their eyes to the world, and showing them that there is a lot of work to be done in the human rights space, in the advocacy and policy making space, and in solving these big issues that young people might often feel are too big for their shoes. So it definitely has been an exciting organization to be involved in, and there's a lot of space to be making real change in the work that we do. I will be sending potentially a bit of information to you after this conversation, if you would like to see a bit more into the work that UN Youth Australia does beyond just the advocating for the United Nations. Matt, did you want to give a quick intro into Regen projects as well?
Look, I'll only focus on one part of our work, and that is a new EdTech app that we're creating that will support young people with ecological literacy, leadership, and entrepreneurship skills. It's a collaboration with another university, the University of Melbourne. And this is something that we've been developing for quite some time. And the pilot is set within the context of Melbourne, but it's something that we're keen to replicate in other places in Australia, but also internationally as well. So keep an eye out for that. And if that does pique interest, please follow up with reaching out. We won't have much time to unpack that now, just because we have a couple of other commitments to step out into. But this is something that we hope will continue to create broad ripple effects. And I just can't emphasize again, very grateful to be collaborating with UN Youth Australia and Georgia and the rest of the team at RMIT University, but also to depend upon all of you for your support in contributing to all of the things you're already doing. But hopefully this is another tool that you can also use in your own toolkits as well. So that's it from me, Vasil.
Yes, thank you so much. And I'll say another thank you to everyone that has been involved in the project. It's definitely been a pleasure.